Hello and welcome back to Whose Power Rankings Is It Anyway? Yes, the place where it's all made up and the power rankings don't matter. It's that time of the year again. It's 2021. The Overwatch League season is starting late, so we're on the edge of our seats waiting for this to start. So it's finally time for me to make my power rankings. I think we're finally at a point where almost every team is stabilized in some way of their roster. I'm looking at you, Valiant. Everyone's stabilized, but we can actually make a proper assessment of these teams and sort of put them in a place where they need to be. This season, we are going to be mixing it up a little bit. A lot of people have been. I'm going to do the same, where we're going to be doing a tier list instead of a 1 to 20 numbers, because 1 to 20 is stressful, I'll put it that way. And a lot of people get very upset about, why is this team just under this team and all that kind of stuff. So I think a tier list is a more general roundabout way of putting the teams and giving sort of an indication of how we all feel they're going to go. So let's get this started. I think it's a pretty easy start to this one, is because we just have to add another tier, because as I was just saying, somebody, don't want to name names, had failed management, and it is still up in the air even to this moment in time. And it's going to be the Valiant. Valiant is going to be at the very bottom. We don't even know what their team's going to look like. There have been rumors from Halo that they're not going to try and be as competitive as we'd hoped. Fingers crossed that's not the case. I really hope we get to see a lot of top tier Chinese contention coming from these players, and it's not just going to be kind of like a Boston Uprising of last season, where no one expects them to be able to break through that 20th place, even though they did at the very end. It does suck. I have been a massive player and fan of the Valiant throughout the last few years, but that team that was sort of built up over the last few years is kind of like low-key dead, which kind of sucks, and everything that we've built and all the fans that it's had, and they are moving to the APAC and Chinese region. So best of luck to them. I think whatever team they put out, we should all support, and we should all make sure that we're supporting those coaches, the player, the team, because it is not their fault that they are in the position they are. So I'm excited to see what they will be able to put out, but for now, we just can't put them anywhere. So this is where they're going to be sitting. So moving on, then we're going to the Vancouver Titans, because Vancouver Titans, I think, is probably the lowest team with expectations coming into this season. And it kind of shows how strong this season is going to be with how many upgrades all the teams across the board have made when you had the Vancouver Titans sitting at the bottom. They've made some additions, but not great additions. And I think that's where a lot of people feel that they might fall short. They have a lot of veteran players, and let's have a look at this as well. So they have the core of Dalton, Treadlock, and Rolf staying within the team. And we saw them last season. They did okay, given the situation where they were sort of thrusted into the Overwatch League in short notice with sort of a hodgepodge of contenders talent. And as we all saw, it just didn't really come together for them at any point. Obviously, they didn't, come last, and they had some good performances, but for the most part, they were one of the weakest teams in the league. So they have made additions of Linksa, FRD, Fried Wiener now. That's a W. He's actually got the name now. Fire and Terror. And I think these are all solid additions. They have a lot of experience, at least within Linksa. He's been in the scene for a long time. But FRD and Fire have both played for the Atlanta Reign and been kind of a little bit of bench warmers. They never really got to play over their counterpart. We saw a little bit of FRD on the Roadhog in the 2019 season. Was it 2019? I don't know. It's been so long. I've been in quarantine for too long. I don't even know which week it is. So, but we saw bits and pieces of FRD, and then we didn't really see much of Fire at all. Just Masar, playing under Masar, he just never really got given that opportunity. Terror was a big question mark for me. Someone I honestly just don't really know much about. So he is a flex DPS player coming from, O2 Blast, I believe it was. Yeah, coming from O2 Blast. A lot of people have good expectations for him. I'm curious to see how he's going to be able to function on this team, because for the most part, they've never had a Korean player And then obviously the failed Our Season 3 roster, and they don't really have the translators. So I'm excited to see how he's going to be able to mesh into this roster and how they're going to integrate him, because he is theoretically the only real flex DPS player in the roster. You have Linksa to play that hit scan, Dalton to play those sort of tracer, and sort of can flex a little bit all over the place. So I actually kind of like the DPS lineup. I think they are pretty solid across the board. For the tank line, it is Shredlock and FRD. Obviously, Shredlock looked pretty solid throughout, one of the shining lights of the roster last season. And I'm really excited to see him pair up with FRD as well. Someone who, I think this goes for a lot of the players who never really got the opportunity to prove themselves. And this might kind of be their last hurrah within the league. If they aren't successful, they might not get given another opportunity. So for a lot of these guys, it's a make or break it moment. And I'm really excited to see how they're going to, grasp at that and how that's going to go. So throughout this, I am going to want to break down the coaching staff and the management because I don't know all the coaches. I don't know all the management, but a lot of these people and coaches of these teams have illustrious careers. So at least we can look into those. So the coaches is Flubby and Pew, which I don't like only having 2 coaches in the Overwatch League. Where in 2021, we have teams that have like 5 coaches. Some of the best teams. I want to at least see 3 coaches on these rosters. I think you can't effectively coach an entire roster with only 2. I think it's hard to work with the macro of how to work as a team and just sort of get everything moving and making sure everyone's sort of working, while also providing that one-on-one feedback to all the players and sort of giving them that in-depth information that they really need to improve and get better, because that's what we've seen throughout the history. And the thing that's not really talked about very much is that when players are coached well, that is when they've really excelled. As much as player talent plays a huge part, coaching is a important and integral factor to that. And I think Coach Krusty sort of embodies that ideology. So would love to see them pick up another coach, but we'll see how that goes out. So that is why I do have Vancouver Titans at the bottom. I am still excited to see how they're going to do, but my expectations for this team is quite low. So moving on, we go to another region, and it's going to start with the Paris Eternal. And I know it kind of sucks seeing the Paris Eternal down here because it is their European team. There is a lot of hype coming around them, but I'm putting these guys in the C tier with the expectation of you guys need to prove us wrong. I think there's a lot of people putting Paris Eternal down here, and until they can come out and prove that they are a better team than how good the league has gotten, it's like really hard trying to work out where you want to put these guys, because there's been so many low tier teams that have just improved drastically with so many great additions that it's hard to be able to put an entire real kind of like contenders new roster into the league and expect them to play over those teams. So it's kind of like the onus is on them to prove everyone else wrong. So that is why I'm putting Paris Eternal here. So we're going to have a look at the roster because it is quite new. Let me close those. So we are going to look at the DPS lineup first. We have Naga, Onigod, and Suna. So Onigod, you should know from the Dallas Fuel. He played sort of the replacement for Decay. Very unrealistic expectations for a newer player coming into the league. But I actually think Onigod held his own very well. But obviously with the dismantling of the Dallas Fuel and everything that happened with that whole nightmare, Onigod ended up going back to Europe and is now joining the Paris Eternal. Really excited to see, because he's kind of now one of their superstar players and with a more realistic expectations, and he has a team that will play around him. So I'm excited to see how he's going to excel on the hit scan, on the tracer, whenever we get to see him play those. Naga is an interesting one. I haven't really watched a whole lot of Naga in Europe and contenders, but he does have a lot of high expectations from him. Phenomenal flex DPS player. I've just seen clips of him and he just kills everyone. Now he has to do it in the Overwatch League. This is the real proving grounds of how good are you, and I'm really excited to see what he's going to do. And then Suna, you should know from the Vancouver Titans of last year. He was one of the players who joined the roster when they first got put together, played in the first few weeks, but when Shockwave joined the team, Suna really didn't play that much. So he's now coming back to the league on Paris Eternal in a more realistic situation, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do because he has been grinding. I've seen him in ranked. He's murdered me a million times in ranked. He's phenomenal. I didn't have a high expectations from him after watching him Vancouver Titans, but after playing against him, after watching him, I actually am really excited to see how he's going to do. So now we move on to the tank line. We've got Elivote and Dan. So Dan, we saw these guys play very recently in the Steel Series Overwatch Invitational, and then here's a classic European Reinhardt. He's coming for you, and he's coming fast because he's going to run you down. Very LH Cloudy vibes of how aggressive he likes to play. My concern of what I only saw that really from him. I didn't really see a whole lot of other looks. We saw a little bit of Wrecking Ball, but for the most part, we only saw the Ryan. So I want to see more from him to be able to sort of work through all the different metas that we're going to see in the Overwatch League. Phenomenal on Ryan, classic European Ryan, but I do want to see more. So that's going to be on him to prove that. And then Elivote coming in from the Washington Justice last season. Obviously, that was another dumpster fire that he ended up getting out of, went back to Europe, and now he's back to prove himself on the Paris Eternal as well. Johnny's favorite player in the world, apparently, just because he's Swedish. But I actually really have a lot of respect for Elivote as well. I think he's been grinding, he's been working, and I really want to see him, once again step up to the reins because I think he was good on the Justice, one of the shining lights on that team. Now we go over to the supports. Neptuno, classic tried and true player. Haven't seen him play in a while. When was the last time we really saw him play? Season 2, because he joined the Guangzhou Charge in Season 3. Unfortunately, never got the opportunity to play, just in visa jail. Unfortunately, just never really came together for him. So now it's his time to come out of sort of the woodwork and prove that he still has it because he was one of the best players and main supports in Season 1 and a bit in Season 2. So excited to see the return of Neptuno. And then Khan. Honestly, never watched Khan before in my life, before the Steel Series Overwatch Invitational. He pounded on that Baptiste. He was very solid. Consistent, Lancer on point, getting picks after picks, playing for himself, playing safe, playing greedy. He honestly did it all, and one of the players that impressed me the most in that Invitational. So really excited to see what else we're going to see from him because, first impressions are very impressive. And that's the sort of the entire roster. I actually like the 7-man roster. I think if I'm putting together a 7-man roster, it has all the pieces that I would want. I think a lot of these players have a lot of versatility, and it's just going to be, are they going to be able to match up to the rest of the Overwatch League with these players? Who knows? As I said, it's on them to prove us wrong and prove themselves. Then we'll look at the general managers. Obviously, we have Avala, and we have Get Maze as the head coach. J-Mac, who played for the London Spitfire last year, has an interesting reputation as a newer coach coming in who's just working hard and grinding for it. Once again, my issue does become that we don't really have many coaches. We only have 2 coaches. Would love to see 3. I do love that they have a translator for JMac though. It means that they're properly taking the right steps to integrate everybody into the roster and that it'll hopefully be effective. So that's the Paris Eternal. I'm excited to see how this entire roster is going to come out. It's a very different Paris Eternal than what we saw last season, but it's exciting. Seeing new rosters, seeing new teams, and seeing new talent, especially Europe, haven't really been given the opportunity. So it's now their turn to really come up and show us what they got. So, staying with the same theme though, the next team that's going to be in the C tier and the last team that's going to be in the C tier is the London Spitfire. I think some people have been rating this team a little bit higher than the C tier, but I'm going under the same precursor of how I had with Paris Eternal. British Hurricanes essentially have been all promoted to this London Spitfire roster in a completely new rebuild, and now it's their turn. They did it in Contenders. They dominated in Contenders in Europe. Now they have to do it in the Overwatch League. How are they going to do it? So it's not just the full British Hurricanes roster. There were some players who didn't make the cut. But we do have Blase, Hybrid, and Shax as the main DPS duo, at least for the first half of the season, because then we have Sparker coming in, who was underage until June 10th, I believe it was. June 10th. So, which is about few months into the season, which it's not a long season. That's a long part of the season, which is why I'm really glad that they picked up Shax. Obviously, Shax and Spark have a very similar hero pool from what I understand. Shax, phenomenal tracer coming from the LA Valiant, and he's just aggressive. He's so good. We saw him play in the Steel Series Invitational. He still got it. He still knows how to shoot people in the head really effectively. So really excited for my boy Shax, see what he can do. Blase coming in coming in on the DPS role. Thankfully, for once, please just let Blase play heroes that he's good at, London Spitfire. I beg of you, don't make him play Hitscan, don't make him play Diva, just let him play what he's good at and let him shine. So I'm really excited to see Blase finally given an opportunity where he's going to be able to do what he's supposed to do. And then Hybrid, I honestly don't know much about. Hitscan player for the team. He's been around in the European scene for a very long time, bounced between a lot of teams in 2020. But yeah, as you can tell here, the hit scan player for that roster. So we didn't see him in the Overwatch Steel Series Invitational, but if he's picked up to this roster, I'm sure it's going to be something to be excited about. Going to the tank line, we have Hatty and Molfig. Molfig was interesting in this Invitational. He played almost exclusively D.Va, a little bit of Xayah, but for the most part leaned heavily, even playing the Brawl, into this D.Va, and was very effective on it. Throughout the entire thing, I was like, maybe the Orisa would be better, maybe the Xayah would be better, but he proved me wrong time and time again, getting the effectiveness on D.Va, getting value from bombs, eating ultimates that need to be eaten. So very impressive. I do want to see more from him though. I want to see him play these other flex tanks. You can only get so far in the Overwatch League playing certain number of heroes. Sure, he has in his hero pool. As I said, I just haven't watched a ton of it. Hatty, as I talked about, Dan, Hatty is the same. Aggressive European Reinhardt. And interestingly, as much as we saw little bits of other things from Paris Eternal, London Spitfire in the Invitational only played this Brawl style. They made adaptations and great adaptations to what the Gladiators were doing and took them to map 5, but unfortunately weren't able to close it out. But they had good adaptations of their one style, but I haven't seen more from them. That is what is my big question mark for this London Spitfire team. Are they going to be able to play other metas if that arises and they need to? So excited to see more from Hatty and Molfig. They had a lot of reputation and a high reputation coming from European contenders. So time to do it on the big stage. Support lineup is very interesting as well because we know these two names. Kellex and Reaper. Kellex was obviously from the Boston of old, and then left after everything happened and then went back to European contenders, made his way back up, made a name for himself. Same thing with Reaper, coming from the Gladiators who never really played over Shaz. And now they're coming together. Support duo, apparently they've been owning it. I'm a little curious to see how much these guys have improved. I am hesitant, and that is why, it's the same thing with the Paris Eternal. This is why they're low. I'm hesitant to give them the benefit of the doubt until they prove me otherwise. And that's this entire roster in a nutshell. Prove me wrong. Prove everyone wrong. That you guys, European contenders, and the highest level of contenders does deserve to be in the Overwatch League. And that you guys are going to be competitive at the highest level. So, moving down, let's look at the coaching staff and what they have on it. Off the bat, I really like Reprise as the head coach. I worked with him. He worked with me at the LA Valiant. He's genuinely nice guy who just loves Overwatch, but he is one of the best coaches I've had on the way that he can give feedback highly effectively while also giving a positive spin to it, give criticism and make you a better player. He worked with me so much that towards the end of Season 2, during the successful part of Season 2 of Valiant and with a lot of other players on the team, and helped us get to that place. Under Packing 10, I'm sure he learned a lot about being a head coach, so I'm really happy he's in that position, and that makes me feel more comfortable about this team because I do have that much respect for him. Then we have Commander X and Fisher, two people who have been within sort of the Overwatch scene since forever. I remember Fisher as a player. So these guys have been around for a while, so excited to see what they're going to do. I honestly don't have any personal experience with them, so I can't go too in depth about it. But if they're under a prize, I'm sure it's going to be good. And as I said, this is the first team that has those 3 coaches. This is a great coaching staff. They have they have an assistant manager in Hoon. They have Nuki as the general manager. It looks very well rounded, and that is something that I do have to say about London Spitfire. So excited to see what they're going to be able to pull out. And that's it. That's it for my first power rankings. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to be breaking down all the teams. We got so many phenomenal teams down here that we're going to have to break down and go through from time to time. I don't want to just put it in one big video because I'll lose my voice. But also it's going to be harder to break all these teams down and distinguish them as we get higher into the more, known rosters and the higher end rosters. So I'm going to be breaking these into multiple videos. Make sure to sort of subscribe if you want to see more of these videos. I'm going to be releasing them throughout the week and sort of probably bleeding into next week. So comment, subscribe, yell at me about how much you don't like any of my power rankings. You think I'm stupid or you think I'm really smart and too big brain and I'm going to get benched again. All that good stuff. All that good stuff. Love you guys and I'll see you soon.